Hello everybody, my name is Kieran DePietro. I am doing this video because I want to start a YouTube channel, and I also eventually want to do podcasts in regards to having conversations about current affair topics. The goal of this is to basically ignite those who are listening to into a conversation, an intellectual conversation. What my goal is here is to provide you with the facts of current events that are going on and to ask questions, have people think about what's going on and to ignite a debate. I want a debate that's intellectual, that's fair, that's neutral. So when I do these interviews, I want to try to present a neutral party. I don't want to be too far to the left, I don't want to be too far to the right. I want to try to be factual and I want to bring up as many facts as possible, but I want to be, have intellect. It's always good to have a deep thought, you know. So, in this video, what we are going to be discussing is we're going to be discussing what happened recently here close to home. The what I call a terrorist attack in Waukesha, Wisconsin. And many of you may say, well, they haven't labeled it a terrorist attack, but we're going to get into that further into this video, into why I classify this as a terrorist attack. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to give the background details of the case, and then after you give the background detail of the case, one of the big questions that's going on, here in Wisconsin, and I'm sure nationwide, is the suspect, Daryl Brooks. Why was he released? Why was he not behind bars after his long rap sheet? But one of the things that I want to discuss here is, we're going to look into that, but I want to give the details of his actual history, of his criminal history, I should say, into understanding the criminal system, what he was found guilty of, how did he get off, and kind of provide the opportunity for a solution. Is a solution going to come off of this? No, it's a very complicated situation, but I want to basically inform you guys that are listening to the facts and then have a interesting dialect about what's going on, why are these things happening, how was he released. It's well known that he had been arrested and just been released on $500 bond prior to that. So with that, I'm going to begin. So, as many of you know, on November 21st, 2021, which was on Sunday, there was a suspect that drove a SUV into a Christmas Day parade going on in Waukesha, downtown Waukesha, Wisconsin. And basically, this is tragic. That's the first thing that I want to say. This is horrifying. It really is. As of now, 6 victims have died. An 8-year-old boy died yesterday. It's just horrific. And I think we should take a time to pray for the victims. Not just for those that have died, but I think we should also pray for the victims that are suffering. Not, and what I mean by that is I don't mean just by those that are in the hospital. Just the trauma and those that weren't even there but may have been affected by this. I think we should take a deep breath, just pray for them, allow them to console, and offer them any help that they need. When people are grieving, they go through different stages. And if you know somebody that was impacted, or even if you don't know somebody, just ask your neighbors or ask somebody, hey, are you okay? Did you hear what happened? Do you want to talk about it? And somebody just even saying that may, somebody just venting to you may release stress off of them. So I think we should really focus on that, and offer any help that we can do, whether it's prayer, whether it's again communication, whether it's donations, whether it's visiting them at the hospital. I believe we should take this opportunity to mourn. This was a tragic event. A Christmas Day parade is an event for children, is an event for families to come down to enjoy, to have fun, and for somebody to do this is just unspeakable. There's no sense of hatred that I can possibly mention that can justify somebody wanting to do this. Why would you want to drive into a parade and ruin so many people's lives? So going with that, the suspect is Mr. Daryl Brooks. He's 39 years old. He was arrested shortly after the incident, and it came out in the news media that basically this man had a long rap sheet, from 1999 all the way until this year. And, he had been arrested in 3 different states. And I want to give you a factual detail of his conviction sheet. Now, this is not his arrest sheet. He was arrested many more times than this, but this is what he was convicted of. Now, keep in mind, when I mentioned this is not talking about speeding tickets or anything like that. This is just somebody talking about criminal convictions. And I'm going to break it down by state. I was going to do it by chronological order, but it gets a little confusing because initially he gets arrested in Wisconsin, goes to Nevada, goes back to Wisconsin, goes to Georgia, goes back to Wisconsin. So I decided, just to make it easier for everybody to understand, I'm going to break it down by states. So the first state that I'm going to bring up is Nevada. I'm going to say Wisconsin for last because that's kind of like where everything unravels in regards to this whole incident. But in regards to his rap sheet, I'm going to break it down by state. So the first state that I'm going to bring up is Nevada. So in Waukesha County, Nevada, he was convicted in November 2006 of statutory sexual seduction, and he was sentenced to probation. Now, basically, what that means is he was found guilty of having, at the age of 24, of having sexual intercourse with a child at the age of 15. He impregnated her. He was found guilty in the court of law, and he was sentenced to probation. Now, many of you may say, shouldn't that be jail time? Now, I haven't done enough research to understand the details to the case, so I'm not going to speculate into the criminal justice system of Nevada, but he was given probation for that offense. In March of 2007, in Nevada, he called a casino called the Nugget Casino Resort in Sparks, Nevada, and he threatened to blow it up. This is while he was on probation for the statutory rape, or for the sexual seduction. I want to be as correct as possible. He was charged with conspiring to disturb the peace, and he was, in the state of Nevada, that is a gross misdemeanor, and he was given additional probation for that. Shortly after that, in 2016, he was issued a warrant for failure to abide by sex offender rules in the state of Nevada. So basically what that means is he never registered with the state that he was a sex offender. In all the states, once you are convicted of certain sex crimes, the judge will order you to register as a sex offender, either for life or a timeline, depending on the crime. Each case is different, but basically he was found to not be in compliance. He did bail out, but then at that point, that's when he fled Nevada and he returned to Wisconsin. The second state that I want to bring up is Georgia. Again, I'm going to say Wisconsin for last because he has quite a long rap sheet, but this is kind of like, again, this is leading into the incident, so I want to kind of put everything together. So in May 2001, he was arrested for a domestic abuse incident. While he was on bond from a case in Milwaukee County, while he also had a warrant from Nevada. Now, I want to go back to Nevada for a second because I forgot to mention this. In 2016, the state of Nevada issued what's called a Nevada-only warrant. And what that means is basically the DA in Nevada stated in the warrant that it is only enforceable in Nevada. So basically, once he left the jurisdiction of Nevada, it was not enforceable. The DA of that county would not pay to have him extradited back to the county or even the state. So this caused a lot of issues because when he was arrested in Georgia, basically the state of Georgia, they had to release him as long as he made bond because the Nevada warrant was not enforceable in the state of Georgia. Now, that is quite common among the western states. A lot of western states have policies for certain crimes that are non-violent felonies that basically they will not extradite beyond a certain point because they don't want to have to spend the money, have to pay, the sheriffs, pay for transportation, so on and so on. So it is quite common. For example, in Arizona, if it's a non-violent felony or a misdemeanor, anything east of the Mississippi River, they will not extradite for it. So, it's quite common in the United States for that to happen. So in Georgia, basically in May 2021, he was charged with domestic abuse. He made bonds in Georgia, and then from there he fled back to Wisconsin. Now, I want to bring up his history in Wisconsin because, again, this is kind of like where it all begins, and essentially this is where it all ends. So basically, his first conviction was in 1999, I should say. His arrest was before then, but the actual first conviction was in 1999. Now, many of you say, why do I keep saying the word conviction? A conviction basically means he was found guilty in the court of law. So basically what that means is, you are arrested, you are charged by the DA, given a citation, and then you show up to court. And at that point, you can either plead not guilty, you can either plead guilty, no contest, or the DA may throw out the case, judge may dismiss the case, so on and so on. So a conviction is actually after you have been found guilty, either by a judge or by a jury. So his first conviction was in 1999. He was found guilty of substantial battery, intent bodily harm. He was sentenced to probation. In 2003, he was guilty of a misdemeanor resisting arrest. In 2005, he was found guilty of obstructing a police officer. In 2010, he was found guilty of strangulation and suffocation, which is a felony. In 2011, he was found guilty of resisting obstructing an officer. Now, this is important because these were all different counties in Wisconsin. One was in Manitowoc County, one was in Thomas County, one was in Milwaukee County. So, this wasn't just all isolated to one county. He had gone all throughout the state. In July 2020, he was charged with 2 counts of recklessly endangering safety with use of a dangerous weapon and possession of a firearm, convicted of a felon. Now, basically, in regards to that case is currently still pending. But basically, in regards to that case, what that case was about was he pulled a gun and it fired in regards to a dispute with one of his cousins at a family event. And basically, he fled. The police showed up, and then he left, and then he ended up fleeing again. In November 2020, he was charged with resisting or obstructing an officer, bail jumping, recklessly endangering safety, disorderly conduct, and battery in Milwaukee County. Now, in that case, as many of you have heard in the news media, that's the case where he ran over his, at the time, girlfriend and then sped off. Now, the thing that's important to understand about that case, the reason why this is kind of leading up to what happened is because the one charge in particular, resisting or obstructing an officer. So the reason I'm saying this right now is because in that one charge, what happened in his case was after he ran over the girlfriend, he fled. Then the police chased him. But then at that point, that is when he got out of his car and ran into the house before the police could arrest him. So I think that's important to emphasize that, he knew the police were chasing him, and then he still attempted to flee he did get into the house. They eventually convinced him to self-surrender without further incident. And that's basically the 2 pending cases that he had. Now, in regards to why was he released on bail for those 2 cases, well, I have here a letter from the Milwaukee County District Attorney's Office. So basically, according to the Milwaukee County District Attorney, for the first case that was active in July 2020, or 2020, I should say, he was initially given $10,000 bond, cash bond. Now, cash bond basically means that you must provide the full amount of cash in order to be released from prison or jail at this point. Prison is after you've been convicted. Now, they went before a court, and then they ended up reducing it to $7,500. So basically, he would have had to pay $7,500 to be released. Now, in February 9, 2021, the state was ready to go to trial, but then unfortunately there was another jury trial going on, so they had to postpone it. Well, as a suspect, he has rights. So as part of his rights, he requested a speedy trial. The state was not able to meet that burden within 90 days. So they had to adjourn the hearing and delay it. So this state DA basically agreed that they would reduce the bail to $500. So he paid the $500 5 days, well, more than 5 days ago, 7 days ago at this point, and he was released, which is leading up to what happened. Him basically, that Sunday, before he ran into the crowd, he basically ended up getting into an altercation, a domestic abuse altercation with his girlfriend at the time. She called the police, and he fled the scene. Now, this is where the facts right now are still murky, so I'm not going to give you 100% accuracy, and I'm not going to try to misinform you. So what we know of right now is that basically he fled the scene. Now, according to the Waukesha police chief, the police did not even have time to respond to send an officer to that call when he had left. They didn't even send an officer at the time before he even ran into the crowd. So what happens is somebody calls 911, 911 sends the dispatch out, and an officer accepts the call, and then they have to go, who report to the call. So basically, after the 911 call was made, he fled the scene even before an officer could even take the call. So the for those of you who may try to say, "Oh well, he was just trying to get out of there," it's hard to justify that when there was no police involvement at that time. Per the prosecutor, he had his first appearance two days ago, and per the prosecutor in that case, he stated that when he pulled up or when he flew towards the parade, detectives and police attempted to stop him, and he ignored them. And when he ignored them, basically the one officer fired a gunshot into the windshield in an effort to stop him, but those efforts failed, leading to this disaster. Now, he was arrested within a half hour after the incident. I don't know if you were aware of this. Basically, he showed up at a man's house. He stated he was homeless. He was waiting for an Uber. The gentleman did provide him a sandwich, did provide him with something to drink, and then the gentleman told him he had to leave. And then he did leave the house. He was standing on the porch. He tried to get back into the house, claiming that he forgot something. And then at that point, that's when the Waukesha police arrested him without further incident. And then he was taken into custody. Now, at his current bond hearing, he was basically given $5 million cash bond to be released. And per the commissioner, he was mandated that when he be released, the sheriff is to walk him over and put an ankle bracelet on him. And basically, he will be free until the next hearing. But I believe, based off the facts of the case, I find it hard that anybody is going to issue him, or anyone's going to bail him out. So one of the things that I mentioned earlier, is one of the questions that I want to pose to you that are watching this is this a terrorist attack? Is this not a terrorist attack? The news media, has not called this a terrorist attack. I believe this is a terrorist attack, and I want to give you some other similar events to this that have been deemed terrorist attacks in the United States and overseas. And the question that I ask you is, why isn't the news media calling this a terrorist attack? I mean, you drive a vehicle into a parade, basically, and I mean, well, regardless of, we don't know why he did it, but the intent had to be there. I mean, the normal person would say that that's not normal. You drive into a crowded area, the average person has to know that it has to cause harm to another person. So these are the incidents that I want to bring up in regards to this discussion. Is this a terrorist attack? Is this not a terrorist attack? So the first case I want to bring up happened in Nice, France, in July 14, 2016. 86 people were killed when a cargo truck was driven into a crowd. Now, per the French police, per the French government, they called this a terrorist attack. They stated that when you intend to inflict harm upon mass crowds, you are attempting to commit an act of terror. In October 1st, 2017, in Edmonton, which is in Alberta, Canada, a gentleman drove a U-Haul truck into pedestrians who were basically leaving from a soccer game. And per the Edmonton police and the Royal Canadian Police, they classified this as a terrorist attack. And they stated the same thing, that basically his intent was to cause terror among the community and to try to cause bodily harm to as many people as possible. In October 30th, 2017, the previous mayor of New York, Bellagio, basically called the next act a cowardly act of terror when a man drove a U-Haul down a bike path and killed 8 people. He called it a cowardly act of terror. And at the time, Andrew Cuomo, the governor of New York, said this was a terrorist attack. Now, that leads again to my previous question. Why has nobody called what happened in Waukesha, Wisconsin, a terrorist attack? So I want to kind of dig further into this. I want to dig deeper into this, and I kind of want to pose some questions. In regards to, well, is it because the suspect is African American? And I'm not trying to bring up a race issue here, but I want to bring up some intellectual thought here that might get people to think. Basically, the suspect in New York was a white suspect. The suspect in Alberta, Canada, was a white suspect. Now, the suspect in France believed to have ties with ISIS. So I'm going to leave that to the side for a moment. But he based off his skin color, he was actually Arabic. But the other two were white suspects. Um, So, now you can look at this and you can sit there and you can say either one or two things. You can say yes, this is a terrorist attack, or you can say, well, we need to do more research. We need to wait for what his motive was, which is understandable. It's innocent until presumed guilty. So let's look a little into Daryl Brooks. Let's look into a little into his past. Basically, he was a aspiring rapper. He went by the name Math Boy Fly. He had his own Instagram. He had his own. He had songs that were on these other apps. I did some research and I want to point out some of the apps. I mean, not the apps. Some of the songs. And in some of the songs, he said "fuck Trump," "fuck the pigs," which is referring to the police, and he had multiple songs about killing people. Now, it's difficult to be able to analyze. Again, it's just a song. What was his mindset? Now, you can look at his criminal history, and you can say this guy had absolutely no regard for the law, no respect for the law at all. I mean, it's blatant he didn't. I mean, um, one of the other things that I do want to bring up, again, he has never been convicted of this, but the prosecutor mentioned this at his bail hearing 2 days ago. He has been given multiple warrants for a paternity test. He has failed to provide a paternity test. Um, he was given jail time also for failing to pay child support on one of his other kids. Um, Now, again, that's some of the stuff that can kind of get us into the mindset of the suspect, Daryl Brooks. You know, uh, what we can basically gather just off what I've researched so far is this guy right here is basically has a career criminal. First arrested when he was 17 years old, still getting arrested at age 49. Now, you know, we're going to revert to the next question. What's wrong with the justice system? And we're going to call it the justice system. I know many of you may be listening to this being like, that's not justice. But for sake of argument, we're going to call it the justice system because it is called the Department of Justice. So we're going to call it the justice system, at a state or a federal level. The Department of Justice, the Wisconsin Department of Justice. And, this is very disturbing. This is very, very disturbing that a gentleman can do all this and still be free. It's interesting because the first thing that I find interesting is that Nevada issued a Nevada only warrant. Now, again, this was issued because he failed to comply with the sex offender laws of Nevada. And the reason I find this interesting is because, you know, if you're the suspect, if you're Daryl Brooks, and I don't know if he knew the warrant was out, I don't know if he didn't know the warrant was out. Again, we don't know the information. We don't know what he knew, what he didn't know. But the fact of the matter is, after this warrant was issued, he fled the state of Nevada. Now, all he had to do was go across border lines and go to Arizona, and he would be untouchable. And he'd be able to commit as many crimes as possible. So, why the state of Nevada did this, I don't know. And I do believe that there needs to be reform because, I'm sorry, but you're a sex offender. You're not complying with sex offender rules. I'm sorry, but you should be sent back to your state of conviction regardless of where you are. Because you're a threat to society. I mean, this is a blatant disregard for a judge's orders for the safety of the community. Um, yeah, that's it. Uh, Another thing too is, he was arrested in Georgia, and basically he was released on bonds, and he had the one in Nevada, but the Georgia officials they released him. They released him, and that's an alarming sign. That's a very alarming sign. What it appears to me, from when I'm reading all this, you got three different states that basically it's kind of like a confederation of states. That they don't there really is no no communication among the states. there really is no um, there really is no unification of the justice system. And another thing, so let's isolate it here to Wisconsin now. From 1999 all the way to 2020, that's almost 20 years. That is 20 years. My apologies. That is 20 years. This guy's been getting arrested. Now, keep in mind, he has other arrests. He was not found guilty of those. But you can see that this is a guy that basically has no regard for the law, has no regard for anything. And should this man have been be free on the streets? Honestly, my interpretation is no. I don't think, it's really disappointing. It's really sad that it took this act of terrorism to basically get him hopefully locked up behind bars. I pray that he never gets out. I pray for his own safety that he never gets out, and I pray for the victims because they're going to be traumatized, and for the community, there's going to be additional victims. Because, I mean, again, if you look at this guy's arrest sheet, he's just keeps getting arrested and arrested and arrested and arrested. And the mother of one of his kids that lives in Milwaukee, she came out and told the news media today. She said, well, she's sickened by this. She wants him to be punished, but she said that he was never abusive with her. And again, this isn't humorous, but it is kind of humorous. He said the reason why he wasn't abusive to me was because he was in and out of jail. He didn't have the opportunity to be abusive to me. She brought up a good point. So basically, yeah, that's to answer one of the other questions, yeah. Now, the second question that I want to pose to you all is, do you believe by the Milwaukee County DA reducing his bail from $10,000 to $500 with him facing two different cases of violent felonies, and that's the critical word here, violent felonies, do you believe the judge or somebody in the DA's office should be held responsible for what happened? And I do believe they should. I understand that, this country was founded on the Bill of Rights. Suspects have rights, Fourth Amendment, right to speedy trial, not right to torture, so on and so on. I understand, the Constitution, but I'm sorry, but I believe that he should never have been released, particularly at his previous rap sheet. This guy's rap sheet, I've said it over and over again, it's ridiculously long in multiple states. So now, we get into a situation of, okay, well, here's a guy that's basically been arrested repeatedly, and now he's basically had a gun, using a gun now at a family event for domestic violence. And, I'm sorry, but this is unacceptable. Reducing his bail to $500, it's sickening, from $10,000 to $500. I believe that if they have never reduced it below, well, I even believe $7,500, I don't think he could afford to get out. And I believe that the judge and the assistant prosecutor, it was the assistant prosecutor that made the recommendation, they should be held in contempt of what happened. Their irresponsibility is the reason why this event happened. That's the bottom line. They should have never released him. They should never reduce his bond. And the justification. Now you may say, well, what's the justification? Now you get into a situation of, well, the state can't, criminals have rights, state can't do this. But then, yes, that is true. I do believe in rights. I do believe that's what makes this country one of the best in the world, is that we do have rights. Once you are arrested, you have rights to a counsel, you have rights to a speedy trial, you have right to pick your own jury, you have this, you have that. But you got to look at the rap sheet, and the DA really needs to do in the district attorney statement that he made to the public, he came out and said that, we're going to do an internal audit. Now, do I believe anything's going to come of that? I hope so. I really, really hope so. I hope that they start cracking down on crime. They start punishing those who are repeat offenders. That's the bottom line. Now, my next question that I want to pose to you, and again, I thank you for listening to this. And the final question that I want to propose to all of you is in regards to the jury trials. Now, the Milwaukee County DA came out and said the reason why they couldn't have a 90-day speedy trial is because there's another jury trial currently taking place, and it would have hindered the case. Now, I kind of want to go off topic here, and I kind of want to bring up what happened. Two major cases that made news this week. The first one was the Kyle Rittenhouse case, and the second one is the Arbery case down in Georgia. And if many of you are not aware, in the Kyle Rittenhouse case, he was acquitted, which means found not guilty of all the events. In Georgia, the suspects were found guilty. Now, one of the things that I want to bring up in my question about jury trials is I want to bring up, you know, the factor of race. The news media was making a big hype that all the jurors in the Arbery case were all whites, and in the Kyle Rittenhouse case, majority of them were whites. And the reason why I'm laughing about this is because I believe that it's always interesting when it comes to a matter of race that basically the news media, I believe, is hyping this up. When it came out that the Arbery trial was made up of a jury of all white people, they automatically came out and said, "Oh, they're trying to play the race card. They're trying to play this and that." And I am very grateful that I fully support the verdict. I fully support the guilty verdict down in Georgia. And the reason why I think that's very critical is because I believe as Americans that we need to take a step back. Not everything should be based off of race. If you what's fascinating about the news media, and I'm not trying to go into a tangent bashing the news media about, we'll get into that in another topic, how I believe the news media is very corrupt. But one of the things is that they found all three of them guilty in less than 2 days. They found all of them guilty. So they're all going to be basically serving life behind bars, and they're facing a federal hate crime case. So that's, again, further down the road. I'll keep you updated on that case. But what's funny about the news media? When the all white jury, found them guilty, the news media should have come out and said, "Oh, we apologize for bringing up race, for bringing up this." Because what they're basically saying is that, "Oh, well, they just picked a bunch of white people down in Georgia who are a bunch of racist bigots." But that's not true. That's not true. They hyped up this race game, and it turned out that, what? At the end of the day, when people on the jury stand, they take it seriously. That's what I really believe. You're messing with somebody's life here. You're messing with, somebody's livelihood. And I believe, there were three suspects, and not all of them were found guilty of the same charges. One was found guilty of all the charges. The second one was found guilty all but one. Then the third one was found not guilty of 3 out of the 8 charges. So, they did take time and effort into try to do the best thing that they could do, and I commend them for that. Moving over to the Kyle Rittenhouse case, I do, obviously, as you may know, he was acquitted of all the charges. I mentioned that earlier. And going into the Kyle Rittenhouse thing for a second, same thing about that jury. They were upset saying, "Oh, it's an all-white jury and they're going to acquit him." But, we have to look into the details of that case. Now, this goes back to about having an intellectual conversation. This goes back into the understanding of the details of the case. So when a crime is committed, let's look at the general perspective of this here. When a crime is committed, we have to sit back and we have to look into the details of the case. My piece of advice for Americans or for those listening is don't believe the news media right away. Sit back and wait for the facts to come out. So when the Kyle Rittenhouse thing came out, it basically came out that he was a white supremacist going around shooting people, that he chased the first suspect, the first victim that was killed, and then he shot at the other 2 victims. And during the trial, though, it actually turned out, per the FBI did have video footage of this, that basically the first victim chased him, and then, they had a tango and he grabbed the gun. That's when Rittenhouse ended up firing at him multiple times. Then that's when the second dude hit him on the head with a skateboard. He fell down, and then that's when he ended up shooting the second guy. The third guy had a gun to his head and basically ended up killing him. No, wounded the third guy, my apologies. He wounded the third guy, killed the first 2. Now, whatever your belief in this, I hear this quite common. He's 17 years old. What's he doing down there with an AR-15? And you bring up a justifiable point. Those of you who are questioning that, and I agree. What the hell is a 17-year-old kid doing in this type of environment? He should be playing home, studying, playing video games, not trying to be a vigilante. Yes, and I do believe this was vigilantism, and I do believe that this is a very dangerous precedent. Now, but going back to the case, though, of the Kyle Rittenhouse, I am going to isolate it solely to the facts of the case. Now, whether you agree with me or you don't disagree with me, this is the point of having an intellectual conversation. So what I'm going to bring up is the details of the first suspect. Oh, not suspect, my apologies, the first victim. So the very first victim had just been released from a mental facility. Now, what he was doing there, let's face the facts. He was homeless. It just so happened to be in the area where he was living. He had a bag with soap. This was a man that was just trying to get by. He wasn't trying to threaten anybody. This was a guy that was already mentally ill. Now, do I believe that because you're mentally ill, you should be killed? No, I do not believe that at all. Do I believe that this government puts enough resources into helping the mentally ill people? No. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because, I'm a correctional officer. I've been doing this for close to 5 years now. It'll be 5 years in April 2nd. So do I believe that there's, enough resources to help the mentally ill? No. Look at where I work, MSDF. Many inmates that have mental illnesses, they just get released, come right back, get released, come right back. Don't give them any resources. Don't give them any, they only give medication when they're incarcerated. When they're out in the street, it's basically a free-for-all. I've seen some of these inmates out in the streets myself, just with a blank stare, just basically trying to get by. So going back to the first victim, he was a mentally ill man, and now do we really know what happens in regards to what got Kyle Rittenhouse and this guy involved? We really don't know. Was Kyle Rittenhouse fucking with him? We really don't know. All we know basically is, and this is why Kyle Rittenhouse was found not guilty of the first offense. He did not pull the trigger until the guy was literally on top of him with his hand on the barrel. That's when he pulled the trigger. Now, you got to look at the Kyle Rittenhouse's fact for a second. He's 17 years old. He should have never been at the riots. He should have never been down there. Yes, I agree. He should have never been down there, but he's there. You can't undo that. And, I could easily play the counter game. Well, what were all the other people doing down there? What are you doing down there at 9 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning? I mean, if you look at their video footage, there's police and armored tanks driving down the street. Even they're scared to go out. Even when they had to grab the suspect, they had to basically do a perimeter security check to basically protect themselves. So it was a war zone. I'm not going to deny that. It was a war zone there. So basically, you're Kyle Rittenhouse, and you see all this stuff, and it's different. It's different when you play video games. Now, it did come out in the case that he did like to play Call of Duty and other shoot-'em-up video games. Now, do I believe that that's the reason why he wanted to be there? Maybe a little bit. I just think he wanted to be there for the thrive. He wanted to be there. Did I think he wanted to kill somebody? I personally don't think so. I think he was a stupid kid. He wanted to be there for the hype. I mean, he went down there with his little Toys R Us medical kit, claiming he was a paramedic. In the court hearing, it did come out. Multiple witnesses stated he was attending medical aid to other unrelated victims. So he did play paramedic. Was he a paramedic? It's confirmed no. But I think in his mindset, he was excited to be in part of something. I think that's really what he wanted. He wanted to play shoot 'em up cowboy Indians type of thing. So basically, when it came down to the first victim, basically the guy's on top of him, and I truly believe the guy was Rittenhouse was terrified out of his mind. After he shot him, he quickly fled. He called his friend Dominic Black, and basically, according to Dominic Black and other witnesses that were there, he was shaking. He was terrified. He started running away, which is normal behavior when you kill somebody. So that kind of leads me to believe that I don't personally think that he did it out of vindictiveness or viciousness, because a real psychopath would have just, stayed there and laughed. I believe that he was really scared and didn't know what to do. And then when he started running down the street, the guy hit him on the head with a skateboard. He fell down. and the guy got on top of him. That's when he ended up shooting him. And then again, that do I believe that's justifiable self-defense? Yes, I do believe that's justifiable self-defense because you got to put yourself in that situation. And again, you got to get away from the fact that again, oh well, what was he doing down there? Oh why, no, you got to look at the actual situation leading up to the shooting. A guy just hit you in the head with a skateboard. You got people screaming at you, chasing you. You just ended up shooting somebody. At this point, your mind's not in the right mental state. Now, again, am I justifying why what he did? What he did? No, but I'm bringing up the facts, and I'm justifying the self-defense claim. Yes. So he ended up shooting and killing the second guy. Now the third guy. The third guy tries to get on top of him, has a handgun directly aimed at his head, and that's when he ends up shooting his arm off. Now he only shot him once, so and then he got up and then he put his hands up, and then that's when the police came and Dominic Black ended up driving him back to Illinois, and then that's when he turned himself in, and what ended up happening a week ago. So, do I believe in the self-defense claim? Yes, but I want to go back again. I want to go back to the jury trial for a second. I want to go back to, why does the news media always want to make a hype out of race? Now, again, I'm only 31. If there's somebody that's been around for 60 or could say, oh, there's been plenty of cases in the past where white juries have let white people off for killing black people or have found black people guilty of crimes that they did not commit. Yes, I understand that. I understand that this country has a past of racism that needs to be talked about. And I kind of want to revert that into this Waukesha thing because my concern is that the politicians are not taking this as seriously as I believe they should. When Jacob Blake was shot, you had all these politicians coming out with these long statements calling this injustice. And again, I'm not stating it is or it is not. I'm just stating simply what the politicians came out and said. David Crowley, you got Tom Barrett, you got Governor Evers coming out saying, oh, this is a racist incident, this needs to be investigated, this needs to be looked into. But my question is, where's the fury, where's the anger? Where's the anger into what happened in Waukesha? Well, first of all, David Crowley hasn't even come out with a statement yet. That's kind of alarming to me. He can come out with this long statement bashing the police, this and that, but where's his statement for what happened in Waukesha? There is no statement. Now, why? And I'm going to leave that for you viewers to think about. Why he can come out and in his statement, and you can Google this. Everything I'm saying is Googleable. David Crowley, Jacob Blake's statement, Google it. And he said in there, oh, even though I don't have all the facts, I know this was a racist incident. I know this is racial injustice. You are a politician. How in the hell are you going to come out there and say that even though I don't know the facts, I know this is racial injustice? How ignorant does that sound? Now, again, I'm not trying to downplay what happened, but I'm playing what happened in Waukesha. He, till this day, has not come out with a statement. Mayor Tom Barrett came out with a statement for David Blake, Jacob Blake, my apologies, and said, oh, this is injustice, this must be investigated. But what about the Waukesha incident? When you got a black man that ran into a crowd of white people. And I'm not trying to bring up the race card, but I am bringing up the race card because we need to have a talk about this. We need to have an in-depth discussion. Why is the news media not treating this the same way? Why aren't they calling this a terrorist attack? Is it because the suspect is black? Is it because he's black? I don't know. I really don't know. I just know that there's no fairness. I lived in Waukesha. I know people who live in Waukesha. I just moved out of Waukesha a few months ago. I used to walk that path every day. And it's heartbreaking. But what concerns me about the news media about this case, I want to get it back on point. What concerns me about the news media about this is how come they're not calling this a terrorist attack? I mean, you drive into a crowd of people. What are you guys waiting for? I mean, in that New York, October 30th, 2017, the mayor of New York came out and called it an act of terrorism. In less than 24 hours, he called it an act of terrorism. He killed 8 people. You have a guy driving into a Christmas Day parade. Disregard his race. Just look at the sole fact of what happened. Didn't call it a terrorist attack at all. What the hell? What the hell? What really scares me is, when Donald Trump was in the White House, everybody said Donald Trump created polarization among the races. You did have white supremacists come out. Did he ignite it? Yes. Do I believe that he provoked racism? Yes. Do I believe he was a racist? I'm not at liberty to say, because I'm not going to speculate on something I don't know. I've never spoken to Donald Trump. I've never met Donald Trump. Now, you can base it off of the things that he said in Charlottesville, Virginia, when he said there's good people on both sides. You can sit there and say, oh, well, he's a racist. Does it appear that he's a racist? Yes. But is he a racist? We really don't know. I mean, would I speculate that he's a racist? Yes. I would speculate that he's a racist, but, George W. Bush, they called him a racist, and he came out and got angry about it. He said, I'm not a racist. So until, Donald Trump came out and said he wasn't a racist either. Now, is somebody going to come out and say they are a racist? I don't think so, But what concerns me is the news media and the politicians are not taking this Waukesha event as seriously as it should be, because and again, I don't commend violence at all, but what really alarms me is you are somebody that lives, a white person, and you see what's going on here. And, when George Floyd got killed, and again, justifiably, that was uncalled for. He was already handcuffed. That was unnecessary. The officer deserved everything that he received. Putting your knee on his neck was unacceptable. He's already in handcuffs. Let the dude calm down. The dude, George Floyd, had been arrested repeatedly, and I'm not downplaying the incident. I'm stating facts here. He'd been arrested repeatedly. He was going to come down, and he probably knew it was just going to be a citation. Well, he did have a warrant for his arrest, but that was uncalled for. But when you're a white person, and I don't want to say ignorant white person, when you're a white person who's a racist or who's ignorant, and you see what's going on, and you see that all these people were protesting and marching over George Floyd, over Jacob Blake, they were tearing up cities, and then all of a sudden you see a guy drive a car, a black man drive a car into a white community. What are you to think? You're going to say, oh, well, the media, the politicians don't care about white people. And that's something that really needs to be thought about. That's something that I really think that those listening to this, watching this, should really sit down and write to the news media and say, hey, look, why aren't you calling this a terrorist attack? Because in other instances, again, in Nice, France, Edmonton, Alberta, in New York, this is a few years ago, folks. This isn't 20, 30, 60, 100 years ago. This is a few years ago. Within 48 hours and 24 hours, the mayor of New York calling this a terrorist attack. But what happened in Waukesha, nobody's calling it a terrorist attack. My question is why? Why? And maybe somebody can come out and give me a good point and say, well, this, maybe I'm missing something here, this, that. Maybe in those cases this, but, I'm completely lost here. When the man in New York went around and attacked people with a hammer, they called it a terrorist attack. So why is it not called a terrorist attack? And it really alarms me, because I don't like to see violence at all, but I like to see respect. And I believe that in order for somebody to not want to retaliate, and that's the thing that's really alarming here, somebody right now, unfortunately, and we're praying, to God, to Jesus, that somebody's not going to do this, but somebody's looking at this and they're possibly planning retaliation. They see a black man killing a group of white people, particularly children. You attack high schoolers, you attack children, a family event. And that's the thing that's really sickening about this, is that part right there. And you're going to have somebody that's planning a revenge attack. And I believe that, the news media is hyping this up into a racist event. And I really think that needs to be addressed. It's really disappointing when you have Kamala Harris can go and call Jacob Blake a hero. Now again, the facts of his case, as many of you were not aware, the police got a call from the mother of his kids, I won't say girlfriend, mother of his kids, that he was trying to kidnap the kids. When the police showed up, he was getting into a fight with another dude. They managed to separate them. Then the police were trying to get him to comply. Now keep in mind, at this time, Jacob Blake had a warrant for another domestic violence case. So basically, at this time, he disobeyed the police's orders. He was into a car. He had a knife, and that's when the officer ended up shooting him 7 times. And what is the first thing the news media said about this? oh, a black man go into his car to check on his kids. Now, what's wrong with that? First of all, the first thing that's wrong with that is his kids were sitting in the back seat. He would have opened the door to the back seat. Per Wisconsin statute, and you can research this, as I said earlier in this YouTube video, you can watch this. Um, the very first thing is, if you're checking on your kids, why are you reaching for a knife in their front driver's seat? Now, am I justifying he should have been killed 7 times or shot 7 times? I mean, I don't know. When you work in law enforcement, it's easy to sit back and play Monday night quarterback, but when you're in that situation, it's very different. You can say, oh, you can have all the training, you can have this, you can have that, but at the end of the day, you're dealing with a human life. You're dealing with two human life. You're dealing with the officer's human life, and you're dealing with the suspect's human life. So you gotta sit back and you gotta actually look at the details and be like, because remember, it's not like the movies. One bullet kills somebody. No, I mean, look, he got shot 7 times and he's alive. Yes, he's paralyzed, but he's still alive. I mean, you get people getting shot 4 or 5 times still living through that. With the advancements in medicine that we have right now, that's the way it is. So, just because you shoot somebody doesn't mean they're just going to stop and comply. It doesn't mean they're just going to drop dead or just going to, give you what you want. So, but when Kamala Harris called Jacob Blake a American hero during the campaign trail, she called him an American hero. Went to his bedside, visited him, called him an American hero. But yet she has said nothing about the Waukesha incident. That kind of alarms me. It kind of shows me how biased they are toward the facts. I want to see everybody heal from this. I really want to see everybody heal from this. So what is needed to heal? What's the things that needed to heal? The first thing that's needed to heal is we need to have a discussion. And I'm not talking about CNN. I'm not talking about that bullshit where people stand up there and then you got half the side is on the right, half the side is on the left. They start arguing back and forth. No, because that's all for show. That's all for ratings. That's not an intellectual conversation. Intellectual conversation is you have to listen to the other person and you have to sit down and think, okay, they may have had a point. And you must be willing to say, okay, well, you know what? Maybe what I'm saying is wrong. Maybe what I'm doing is incorrect. Or you may look at that person and say, wait a minute, yeah, did you know this? And that's the biggest thing, though. We live in a society now where, crying out loud, you sit down and you try to have a conversation. Oh, you're racist. You don't agree with me. You're racist. Or oh, fuck you. You're just a BLM supporter. Fuck you. That's the kind of society that we live in. We live in a society that people don't want to hear each other talk. And I saw that during the Donald Trump. After Donald Trump lost the election, I saw a lot of articles that said families were divided. You have grandmothers who haven't seen their grandkids because they either voted for Trump or didn't vote for Trump. Think about that for a second. You have a family divided over a man who is elected that has nothing to do with your life. Nothing to do with your life. You're creating a divide for what? And it really saddens me. But I ask you, for what? And if you're listening to this podcast and you are one of those people, I don't know, maybe you cut off your son, maybe you cut off your mom, maybe you cut off your best friend, maybe they voted for Biden, they voted for Trump, whatever situation, or maybe they voted for Hillary Clinton or Trump, whatever situation that it is, and you stop talking to them all because of that. Is it worth it? I'm asking you, is it worth it? Because, we are so polarized right now. We are so polarized. And what is it going to take for this country to heal? What's going to take, again, is a actual conversation. The second thing that I think that needs to happen for this country to heal, there has to be integration. There has to be integration among all the races. It's easier said than done. It's easy to say, oh, well, we're accepting a certain amount of black kids, or we're accepting a certain amount of white kids, or Asian kids, or, but I don't really think that's integration. When little kids are little, you've seen this. I'm sure many of you have seen this. When kids are little, they play together in the sandbox. There is no, oh, he's black, I don't want to play with him. It just, you got the one kid that might be a bully, give me the truck, or, one kid starts crying, but that's normal kid stuff. Where does the racism come in? Racism typically comes in, around the early teen years, and then from there, it kind of grows. And I'll say that I'm at fault. I'm at fault for this too. Am I a racist? No, but am I the I mean, is there racism in me? Yes. For me to sit there and say no would be a farce. It's not. It's not true. Am I? Do I support a lot of things that Black Lives Matter supports? No, not at all. But again, my justifications are because of my job, what I see at the job. You see guys get arrested. You see sex offenders getting arrested all the time for sex offender violations, getting released the next day. Um, so in my mindset, you got Black Lives Matter standing up for them. And my thing is just like, no, like these are terrorizing your community. Why are you defending them? Why are you defending them? But then I look at the part of Black Lives Matter, which I understand, and I support their cause when they say that police discriminate against them, and again, the justice is unfair because it is true. If you live, but I don't really think that's a race issue though. I think that's more of a income issue. If you're African American, if you're Asian, if you're white, if you're poor, you're not going to have the same opportunities that a rich person would have. Look at Kyle Rittenhouse. Look at Kyle Rittenhouse. I mean, he owes his life to Donald Trump. Many of you know he visited Donald Trump after his acquittal, which I find kind of humorous, considering he owes the man his life. Because if it wasn't for Donald Trump, he'd probably be sitting in a jail cell here in Wisconsin. But yeah, Donald Trump came out with that statement, and he ignited the right to back him up. And now Kyle Rittenhouse is this little 17-year-old, 18-year-old man that thinks he's hot stuff now because he has all this money thanks to Donald Trump. So he does owe Donald Trump his life. Um, but I think the justice system is unfair to those that are poor. But then let's go back to Darrell Brooks for a second. This is a man that is poor. There's a long ass history of convictions, and they don't give him shit. They don't give him anything. How are you gonna have sex with a 15-year-old? How many other underage kids did he have sex with? Now again, this is speculation here, so just it's a fruitful thought. I mean, if he had no regard to file the sex offender rules of Nevada, then I mean, look at this guy's arrested, refusing to do a paternity test, refusing to pay child support in Wisconsin. I mean, and they lock him up for a little bit, release him, lock him up for a little bit, release him, give him probation. What's his justification now? Like, Black Lives Matter, are you guys fighting for this man? Are you fighting for this man? That's something that I think we should all sit down and think about. It's easy to sit there and say, "Oh, Black Lives Matter," but again, my question is, what does Black Lives Matter mean? And one of my future segments, I'm going to have a few people, with me that are Black Lives Matter supporters, and we're going to have an in-depth conversation about what the cause actually stands for. Like, what are they trying to pursue? Are you trying to get equality? Are you trying to get a fair justice system? Because look at this. This is not fair. Are you going to stand with Darrell Brooks, stand with him and say this was fair for him, that he should have keep getting released, keep doing this shit, keep terrorizing the community, keep having, keep committing crimes in all these states, keep getting domestic violence? Oh, that's another thing too I want to bring up. This guy had a total of 11 domestic violence charges against him. 11. He's 39 years old. 11 domestic violence charges against him. 11. What the hell is it going to take to get locked up? That's my question. What is it going to take to get locked up? I mean, you have 11 domestic violence charges against you throughout your whole, basically, criminal career. If he had put that to doing something useful, he could have done wonderful things. But instead, he resorted to crime. So that's my question. Like, are you guys going to stand with him? Or are you guys standing, against police? Like, that's one of my questions, And again, we're going to have that in a further segment. So for right now, since we're close to, I'm going to try to limit this to an hour initially because I don't want to keep you viewers bored or anything. But we're at 59 minutes right now. So I'm going to cut this short right now. In my next my next viewing YouTube video, we are going to do a segment on the economy. I'm going to do a segment about inflation. To give you a little sneak peek of what that's going to be about, it's going to be about what is causing, number one, what's causing this inflation. I have some interesting reports. Is it because of Donald Trump's policies? Is it because of COVID? Is it because of corruption, because of greed? So that's some of the stuff that I want to kind of get into, just to provide you some facts, provide you some historical things about inflation, about, consumer price index, stuff like that. So yeah, I thank you all for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this. Again, this is my first video. It's not perfect, but let me know, and send me some private comments, because again, I'm gonna improve. I'm gonna improve with time. Thank you.